Добрый день всем. В эфире Елена Титарева и моя программа «Факторы успеха». Сегодня у меня в гостях Ксавьер Ли. Ксавьер – бизнес-тренер, executive коуч, который специализируется на построении высокоэффективных команд. И в прошлом вице-президент по стратегическому маркетингу. И сегодня у нас очень интересная тема. Мы будем говорить про успех, про разные его проявления. Наш разговор сегодня будет на английском языке, поэтому слушайте нас на английском, учите английский, потому что, по большому счету, за этим, конечно, будущее. И очень трудно взаимодействовать и коммуницировать без знания английского. Поэтому, ребята, смотрите нас все на английском. Hi. Hi, Xavier. We are on the wave of Radio Rost, which means radio growth. And this particular program especially dedicated to the business development, personal growth and success. And my first question to you is about success. What is your own definition of success?
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me, Elena. Добрый день. That's a great question to start with. Success for me actually is both, it compromises both inner game and an outer game. So for me, success means feeling fulfilled, being happy, and doing something that you feel like you were called to do here in this world. In this life.
Great.
And the other is that I think if you're loving what you're doing and if you're very successful at it, there should also be some tangible results that also appears out in the real life, like a scorecard, right? So
I like this metaphor.
Yes. So I believe that success can also mean it doesn't have to be lots of wealth, but enough to be comfortable. And also some signs that you are contributing to the world, that you are making a difference to people's lives. So to me, that would be a definition of success.
And is it possible to model success?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What is your role models?
I have so many role models.
Yeah, could you share, please?
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
People usually want to hear names.
Yes. It's interesting because in the beginning, my role models were obviously people who were much more externally successful, like great leaders. I admired people like Alexander the Great, for example, when I was a kid, making a big difference in the world.
Alexander the Great?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I'm impressed.
When I was young.
Okay.
But as I grew older, I really started respecting and recognizing that some of the people who seemed happiest were people who were actually keeping a more quiet lives and who were making a difference in quiet ways. For example, Robert Dilts, who will be here in April, I think he's an amazing model of somebody who is making a difference in the world by teaching his wisdom and expertise.
Yeah, honestly, he is also mine role model.
Fantastic, yeah. Judith Delosier, who teaches with Robert, and she embodies wisdom in the most humble way. So these are some of my recent teachers and models that I respect very highly. Dalai Lama, I think he has a quiet happiness, that he exudes. Many people talk about being in his presence and feeling just happy and joyful. So I think these are some of the people that you would recognize as role models.
Yeah. Actually, this is very important, how the people feel with, these great leaders, great people. It's really very important.
Absolutely.
Indicator.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you think that it's possible to model success,
yes.
what's the way to do it?
I was just talking about that inner game and outer game. And I think it's really important to be able to, when you're looking at a model, not just see what they're doing behavior-wise, but also really look at what is happening in their inner world. For example, their beliefs, their philosophy, their mindset, how they treat themselves as well as others, and also how much action and what is their intention, right? So I think if you look at both the mindset, the beliefs, and the actions that they take, the type of goals that they set for themselves, I think this is a way you can model people about how they become successful. Yes.
Does one have a special mindset to be successful?
I think there are lots of different mindsets, and there's lots of because there are lots of different successes. So I don't think there's one, standard or one recipe for success. I think there are some common universal traits, though.
Okay.
Usually, one of the most common, I think, the mindset is a growth mindset, which means that they're always looking...
Growth mindset.
Yes. They're always looking to find out what could be improved. It doesn't mean they're unhappy with where they are, but actually they're always looking to see what could be even better or be improved. And they look at failures not as failures, but as learnings. So there's a constant way of adjusting, right? So I think this is one common trait among a lot of people who are very successful. Yeah.
Great. You were talking about inner and outer game.
Yes.
I'm not sure that all our audience, or not all our audience, understand this concept.
Right.
Can you be a bit more specific and explain what is that?
Sure. It's actually interesting. This actually, the idea of an inner game actually comes from a very famous book called Inner Game of Tennis.
Yeah.
And this was, I forgot who the author was, but he was a very famous coach who used to coach world-class tennis players. And what he found out when he was coaching his best students, the world-class tennis players, is that physically you can only go so far. But what really sets champions is their beliefs and their mindset, how they think inside, right? The kind of not only the kind of beliefs that they have, but the way they motivate themselves. Tony Robbins, for example, he talks a lot about this inner game, right? And so this is a concept that's become very popular, but it's always been true because even if you study, for example, martial arts, people often talk about having that inner calm, that readiness, and that a lot of times, martial arts fight is over before it even starts because it comes down to sort of that mental strength and flexibility. So that inner game is talking about how one is prepared and how one is ready in their mind, in their thoughts and emotions. The outer game is, of course, more about techniques and skills, experiences, expertise. So going back to the metaphor of tennis, the outer game might be, your actual backhand and forehand techniques, how quickly you can serve and so forth. But all of that is really affected, again, by the inner game.
Yeah, I agree. And, I tried to remember the name of this guy.
Yes.
I think we will have, the break soon and we will check and came back.
His name is Calloway. Last name is maybe Calloway, but I can't remember that.
No. I just can't remember. But we will check it for you. And let's talk about SFM. SFM, or Success Factor Modeling, is the program which was developed by Robert Dills. Robert Dills is my teacher, and I believe that he is a real genius. And I passed this program and became its big fan. And part of my mission is to share about success factor modeling as much as I possible.
Yes.
And actually that's why I came up with an idea to do weekly talks about success factor. And you is my first guest.
I'm very honored
Actually
to be
invited
here.
to this program.
I'm very honored to be here. Thanks, Elena.
Yes, thank you. And actually, it's my first program which I'm doing in English.
I'm very impressed. Your English is fantastic, much better than my Russian.
Thank you. Oh, nice to hear.
Yes.
Okay. And I also know that you also the part of the program of Robert Deals. And could you please share what the success factor modeling is for you?
Okay.
And what is something unique or fresh for you?
Sure. As you said, Robert and John, his brother John Dilts, really started developing success factor modeling almost 20 years ago when his brother John Dilts was a venture capitalist. He was a lawyer in the Silicon Valley, and he worked with a lot of different companies. And he found out that there were certain factors that made these companies very successful. So both Robert and John really delved into what is the difference that makes the difference, right?
Yeah, what the difference that makes difference.
Right.
It's actually one of the most significant and important questions.
And Robert was able to break it down into really the three main parts, which was, well, what is the difference in their mindset? What is the difference in their actions? And what is the difference in their goals or outcomes? So there are various components that is really explored in success factor modeling. So he took both his clients as examples, as case studies about what's successful. As I said, I think one of the things that's really important about success factor modeling is that it's one of the few programs that really combines both the inner game, you know, what's happening inside a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
As well as some very practical, tangible, useful tools that's used in business. So, you know, having a good elevator pitch, understanding your stakeholders. So having these tools really, and combining them in a way that's very practical as well as that's really connected to someone's identity is, I think, that's unique.
Exactly. For me, is actually the most important part, and it's that it starts from the identity.
That's
that
right.
it's not actually something which was copied from others. It's something from the identity.
Exactly.
And for me, it's the most amazing thing in this program. And actually, now we should have some breaks.
Okay.
And then we'll go back, to success factor modeling.
Рост.фм.
Добрый день еще раз. С вами Елена Титарева и Ксавьер Ли. И мы продолжаем нашу программу «Факторы успеха». Продолжаем говорить об успехе, о различных его проявлениях. Ксавьер.
Yes. Добрый день.
We continue with success factor modeling. And do you know, I recall the first time when we met. Do you remember this training this masterclass by Michael Grinder in Moscow?
That's right.
When we sat next to each other and we share about our stories, our experience, and we realized that we have similar experience, similar background. And could you please share your story with us?
Sure.
Why you moved from the corporate finance world for the training and coach's career?
Right.
Because I personally know your story, and I really believe that it's very strong. And I actually, on my training, I share it with the people because I really believe that it's a very great example.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting story. After business school, I started my career with American Express, which is a fantastic company to work for. I had the pleasure of working in American Express in New York, and really enjoyed that job. But I had a really kind of an important event that happened. I left the New York office because they sent me to their Asia Pacific headquarters. Really 3 weeks before 911, when the plane crashed.
Ooh.
So I literally had my friends and colleagues who died from that incident because our office was right next to World Trade Tower. Mm-hmm. So it made me think about what's important. And later, when I moved to another job with Cigna, I was working in a strategic planning and strategic marketing role, which I was also very good at, and I was very happy, and I got several promotions. And then several things happened which I think that re-triggered that event about what's important. And one was that one of my colleagues literally died from stress. Yes.
Yeah, I know the story.
Yes. And so when my CEO asked me if I actually offered to promote me to a chief marketing officer position, I had to really think, is this something that I want? And my eventual answer, even though I loved my team and I loved a lot of the work that I was doing, was no, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to make a difference. The only problem was I didn't know how. I didn't know what.
Yeah, I know this problem because I had the same.
Yes.
Yeah, when I stopped for KPMG,
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's a very similar journey where, we are on a sort of a very successful career path. And then, about the story of hero's journey, right?
Exactly.
It's basically you hear a calling, but you're too afraid because what you have is very comfortable, right? So, as you and I both know, we were in a very comfortable, very probably successful path. But I think in a way, eventually when that knock gets so loud, you can't ignore it anymore. And I felt it physically, like I was starting to have physical problems, acid reflux. And as I said, my coworker passed away. Another one was very sick. So I made the decision to leave the corporate world and started really searching. And this is when I discovered mindfulness, meditation. This is also when I discovered neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which is how I met Robert Diltz and Judith Delosier. And I met these wonderful people who were doing amazing things, empowering people and keeping, waking them. Yeah. And I thought, wow, this is the kind of work that I would like to do. And what was also really interesting was studying NLP and some of the other behavioral sciences. I realized what I was doing both well and not well. Like, for example, I was a very good leader. I was known for building very high-performance teams that had high morale. But to be honest, I didn't know how I was doing it. So I didn't know what the difference that made the difference was, right? I didn't know what my own success factor modeling was.
Okay.
So learning about NLP helped break that down for me. And I think good complementary was like mindfulness, the practice of that. It gave me clarity and maybe the emotional, social intelligence to be able to see what was important and what made the real difference. So my path has been really to empower people, both as leaders, as business people, but also really have people feel more fulfilled.
That is important.
Yes, like I don't want ever somebody like from my, my coworker who died from stress. I never want to see that again. I want people to feel fulfilled and take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, This is really great. Yeah. And you will go back to success factor modeling.
Sure.
How you apply it for your client?
That's a good question.
Yes, it is, I know.
Okay. So I think the first way I apply it is actually by teaching it, right? Because I teach the theoretical models. And the second thing is I try to model it for myself, live it, right? So when I teach it, for example, just like when I met you in California last summer, you were there with other people, and I remember how excited people were.
Yeah, and that's true.
Yes, and you were inspired by all these different examples that you saw. So I try to share this kind of knowledge in a way that's very relevant and practical to people. Like the workshop I just did, I was really happy to find that like people, even though it was a very hard workshop, they came back after the third day and said, I couldn't sleep. I was working till 2 or 3 in the morning because I was so inspired.
I know, this is the most, great outcome for the trainer, yes, from the seminars. Yeah. Yes. Good job.
Yeah,
good job. And let's talk about mindfulness and resilience. I know that it's really very important to be successful in business, in very aggressive business environment. Right. But not all people understand the definition of those.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I know that you focus particularly on those ideas. Please, let us know what it is and why it's so important.
Sure, yes. So a very simple definition of mindfulness is an awareness of what is happening internally and being able to have a choice. So you have a conscious awareness of what is going on with you. And when you practice mindfulness, and this could be in forms of meditation, can be yoga, even walking can be a mindfulness exercise. But when you practice learning how to be present, it gives you a certain amount of clarity. And it actually increases people's emotional intelligence. And what's interesting is that these concepts sound very ambiguous, but they're actually very important for tangible results. So, for example, I'm a certified teacher for SILI, Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, which was a mindfulness program that was developed at Google. And
I know that.
Yes. And the reason why it was so popular and it was sponsored by Google was because they found that mindfulness had an incredible effect on productivity and happiness. And if your employees and team
mindfulness have very significant impact on productivity. Take it into account. It's really, really important.
Right, exactly. So they found that it was really important even at Google. In fact, there are several studies. There was a study done by Stanford University when they surveyed the top engineers in Silicon Valley companies. And we're talking very technical field, right? Engineers, people who are working in very science-oriented technical fields. When they said, give us your 5 or 6 top traits, what are the most important skills for them to be the top performers?
So high performance.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, 4 out of those 6 traits were all emotional intelligence traits. Being able to listen, being able to communicate, having an emotional awareness and management. So, and this was across different companies. So after a certain level of technical competence, what really sets apart the really high performers are their emotional intelligence. So that's something that I found to be incredibly interesting. And also just for myself, it's been incredibly useful for being able to manage difficulties, to also understand people. So this is definitely an area that I like to emphasize and focus on.
You know that many people believe that it's so time-consuming to do things like that.
Yes.
And they are so busy to apply it. Do you agree? Is it really time-consuming? What do you think about that?
It can be, but But it doesn't have to be, right? So I have a lot of clients who are very busy executives. I have, senior VPs who are running large teams, and that's actually what you just said is their first complaint. I don't have time to practice meditation or yoga or mindfulness. So I often teach them a very simple, just a grounding technique. And sometimes I have them do it on their way from their office to the meeting. So
it's great.
Yes. So by the time they get to the meeting, they're very present. And that affects the atmosphere and the environment of the meeting. And a lot of my clients have told me that just even that, being able to feel their presence and be mindful on their way from their office to the meeting room, sometimes only 30 seconds.
30 seconds?
Yeah.
It's a really good job.
Okay.
It's a really good job. Okay, I think we need to do another break at the moment, and then we go back.
Okay.
And maybe you can think of anything, then we can do all together here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, I would be happy to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Рост.фм.
С вами Елена Титарева и программа «Факторы успеха». И со мной здесь Ксавьер Ли, мой гость, executive коуч, который специализируется на построении высокоэффективных команд, работает действительно с топ-executives, бизнес-тренер и консультант по осознанному лидерству. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Xavier.
Yes.
So we continue with success factor modeling.
Yes.
And before the break, we promised to do some mindfulness exercise.
Yes.
Do you want to lead it?
Sure, I would love to do it.
Yeah.
So often people think that mindfulness exercise or meditation is some long, complicated thing. But there's actually very simple ways to do it. And one I like to teach actually my busy executive is to just take literally 15 seconds. Two things we always have is our breath and our body.
Наше дыхание и наше тело.
So always start with our breath. So let's take just a couple of seconds to take a deep breath in. I'd like you to take 3 deep breaths. And then with each breath out, imagine yourself letting go of anything that you don't need right now. Any stress, thoughts that you just don't really need at the moment. So feel yourself being present. And if you want to do it a little bit longer after the breath, I want you to go ahead and focus on a part of your body. It's often nice to start your focus on awareness with your feet and feel yourself being grounded by the earth underneath you. So feel the bottom of your feet actually touching the floor. And then move your awareness slowly up from your feet to your ankle, to your legs. No judgment, just an awareness, just noticing what's happening. It's neither good or bad. Just notice whatever is there. And then we'll take one more deep breath in, deep breath out. And notice, if you did this exercise, how much more present you feel, even just with these few seconds.
It actually was great. Yeah, it's actually quite hot here, but despite of that, I become more calm and really present.
Nice, yes, absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those great experience. And let's go to success factor modeling.
Sure.
How it's related to leadership?
I think success factor modeling one of the things that really is important is that it looks at both the component of yourself as a whole and yourself as a part of a larger system. So Robert introduces this idea of holons, which is actually not it's an old idea, and it's actually quite used a lot in science. So the fact that holon means that we are part of something that's both smaller and larger. For example, if you think about your body is made out of different organs, your heart, your lungs. Yes. But each of those parts are also made out of many different cells, which are discrete and unique, right? So if you move up, we're an individual, but usually we're also part of a family or a part of a community. So, for example, if you live in Moscow, you're a part of Moscow, and then you're part of Russia, right? So and then to an even larger extent, we're all part of humanity. So we all belong to both something that's smaller and to larger.
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's right.
So what's important about this concept is the fact that as leaders, we are affecting the system both below and above us, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think this is one of the concepts that's very important. And the other concept about, if you talk about ourselves as a whole, and the other concept that I think that's introduced in success factor modeling is the concept of vision versus ambition, right? Or mission. Right?
Yeah, we touched it a little bit in the beginning, but maybe we need to expand it's a little bit more.
Sure.
But take into account that we really tough in time, and I also want to speak about Silicon Valley because, so we need to manage our time.
Right, there's so many things to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So did you want me to talk about Silicon Valley? Okay.
No. Could you say maybe several words about mission versus...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So
ambition.
So in the sense that vision and is more about serving something that's greater than you, right? Whereas ambition is about really fulfilling also what you need. So to give you an example of my coworker who died from stress, he was actually very good at his mission and vision. He was serving the company, he was serving his family, so he was working extremely hard. The problem was he was not paying attention to ambition or how to self-care. So he wasn't taking care of himself and what made him healthy and happy. So obviously the consequence of that was terrible. So there has to be a balance between taking care of yourself, your ambition part versus your mission and vision.
Yeah, and this is the most significant part of the cycle of success in SFM. We will not go in more details about it. But one more question about leadership.
Sure.
What is your role model as the great leader? And what their maybe secret ingredients of success?
Okay. That's a really good question, again. So I also have lots of great leaders, right? More great role models for leaders. One very famous and obvious one is like Gandhi, right?
For sure.
And for me, the reason why he is such a good role model is that he was able to influence millions of people without any formal power. He was able to he was able to create huge changes just through his influence. And the way he did that was just by modeling what he wanted to see in the world, right? Of practicing pacifism.
Yeah, be the change.
Yes, exactly.
You want to be.
That his famous words, be the change you want to be. And he really modeled that. Other role models are people that you wouldn't know. Like, for example, I had a great boss at American Express and both the great bosses at American Express and Cigna. There was one leader at Cigna who led a great team, but he was always out of the office by 5 o'clock, you know? And he...
Yeah, it's amazing capability, I believe,
yes.
to do that.
Because he was very efficient, and he was also very effective at getting his team, and he trusted his team to deliver. And what also that did was it modeled for his team members how to balance like ambition and vision. So he modeled how to take care of himself, and that made him become a more effective leader.
So what is your life hack from that? Life hack from that?
My life? I'm
life
sorry.
hack? Do you know what is life hacks?
No, that's an interesting term. Okay. That sounds like an interesting term.
Okay. It's something useful.
Okay.
Yeah, something useful that the other people can use.
Yes. So
just conclusion.
Sure. My conclusion, what I learned from that is that it's just like the metaphor of an airplane. You know, if you want in order for you to take care of yourself, you must also take care of yourself first. You know, like they say, you always put the air mask on yourself first before you help other people.
Yeah, it's really important. Take care about yourself first to be successful in the world. Great. I think now we need to move to Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, a lot of people know that this is the place where the most talented people and successful companies are concentrated. And, you know, again, I had absolutely amazing experience last summer during our journey to the Silicon Valley. For me, it was so amazing experience. And when I saw what the people actually doing there, what the companies doing there, it's unbelievable. And the level of creativity which is around it, it's also amazing. But what's actually the reason for that?
Well, I think by both luck and by design, Silicon Valley was able to develop a culture that's very unique. And I think the biggest factor for, I think, success is that people who live in Silicon Valley and work there are often not afraid to fail.
Okay.
And this is
not afraid to fail.
And this is actually something that's, like I said, you can't do it by yourself, because no matter how brave you are, if there's a lot of judgment around you and the environment doesn't support that, then it's very difficult to practice this.
Agree.
So one thing that has been amazing about the Silicon Valley area is that the environment is very supportive of this. It's actually one of the very few places in the world, I was joking about this with a friend of mine, that if you say, oh, I'm a vice president at Apple, people will go, oh, I'm so sorry. Because having a job is almost a failure, because people expect you to do your own thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not always, but it's a bit of a joke. But but there's this really concept of trying things over, and people, even when you're looking for jobs, often in Silicon Valley companies, having lots of different companies in your resume, in your CV, is not a bad thing. They actually expect that, because they think if you are very good, that many people will try to steal you.
Yeah, it's very different from Russia.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, it's really interesting. Yeah. Many people believes that the reason for such success is because of special economic condition, such as tax incentives or cheap financial resources. Do you agree with that?
I think steady infrastructure definitely helps. I don't think that's the most important factors. I think Silicon Valley had some very unique environmental factors that helped that. For example, it had some very leading university like Stanford, and UC Berkeley very close by. And so there was a lot of research that was very closely available. There was also a lot of money, and the fact that I think a lot of people like to come to California, especially San Francisco, as a place to move to, was also an attractive factor for being able to get a lot of good people.
Yeah, that's great. You know, the experience last summer with the Stanford Research University, Research Center, it was absolutely amazing. When I saw what actually these people do, it's really unbelievable. But I just think we're already in the next century. Really, it was so impressed. But what is actually the source of such creativity?
I think that's a great question, and I cannot give you a definite answer. People have been trying to answer this question because they want to duplicate it in many different places. In my opinion, one of the most important is the fact that, like I said, there is this openness to take risks.
It's about the mindset.
It's about the mindset, and also trust. There's a lot of there's a culture of collaboration, so that people are
mindset, open mindset, trust, and openness. And
people are willing to share their ideas because there's this sort of belief that ideas are cheap.
Yeah, the people want to share their ideas. And actually, it's very different what we see in Russia at the moment. Because what I see with my clients, because we are not really want to share. Because we believe that somebody will steal our ideas, our business, and our money, and all this stuff.
Yes. And this is actually also true in America, too. So in some ways, Silicon Valley has a sort of a unique culture. It's not, and by the way, that's not the only place such culture exists, but I think it's very famous for that.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think it can be manufactured. This kind of trust can be developed.
Okay, suppose somebody from our audience want to move to Silicon Valley. For example, they want to bring their business to international level. What should they consider?
Very high cost of living. It's very expensive.
Guys, very high cost of living.
So there are a lot of pluses about being in the Silicon Valley. But I also want to actually caution people there are also some minuses. One of my clients was actually a very, very successful entrepreneur, high-tech entrepreneur from Japan. He actually created, I think, 4 different online companies that made him a multi-millionaire by the time he was 25. So very successful guy. And he decided to come to Silicon Valley because he thought, I want to play in the big field, right? So he tried to start a company for 2 years, and I was I was helping him for part of that. He actually had an extremely difficult time in Silicon Valley, and I asked him, "What's the biggest challenge?" And he said, "Well, here everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, so." So I can't keep a team together because they all leave.
Okay. Yeah, great. Yeah, great example. But anyway, for example, could Silicon Valley venture investments to be interested in Russian business in any way? What do you think?
Can you talk more about that? When you say
is it possible for Russian people to attract, investor and to attract venture investors for their business? Is it possible in any way? What do you think?
I believe so. Yes, absolutely. One thing that's kind of shameful about America is that a lot of Americans are not very aware of other countries and other cultures. Of course, there are a lot of very sophisticated people and people who are well-traveled, but other cultures are not very well known, including, unfortunately, in Russia. We have certain way different countries are portrayed in our media. So I think one way we can do that is to introduce parts of Russian culture or products in a way that's different. And I think if you can break through some of the preconceptions, then I
preconception. I think this is the good word for which has actually happened.
Yes, then I think there's actually tremendous potential.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's great. And actually we have only 1 minute for our program. And thank you very much for this amazing overview. And you came and share with us your ideas, your experience. And the last question is, could you please maybe recommend an authors or particular books which make possible to go deeper with the ideas of conscious leadership as success modeling?
Right, okay. Well, there's a book obviously written by Robert Dilts on success factor modeling. He's got 3 books.
That's a great book, I'm confirmed.
And also part of his team member, like Francois in France, he actually wrote a book called Mastermind Grouping about collective intelligence. So these are great. And of course, Robert Dilts is coming. I think he's coming to Moscow in April.
Yeah, it's quite soon,
So if you have a chance to look at that. People like yourself, Elena, and Sergey Kapitsa, who hosted me for the Success Factor Modeling workshop recently, I think you guys are pioneering this idea of success factor modeling in Russia.
Thank you. Yes, actually, that's true.
And so you guys have experienced it. So I think you guys are great resources to learn more about this hopefully in your future workshops. And I hope you write a book.
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Fantastic.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been really fun. I really enjoyed talking about my experiences.
Yeah, and one more time, today with you was Elena Titarieva and Ksavier Li, who is executive coach specializing in the high performance team building, business trainer, and much, much more.
Thank you so much.